flavor, like Stephen King writes horror.
Alright, welcome back to the channel. Hey guys, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, help us out by hitting that like button and subscribing. It really helps us bring you this content. Today, what we're doing is just a little backyard barbecue. We're not doing anything too special. I got some of these bone-in country-style pork ribs that we're going to do today. I'm going to show you kind of our method on how we do that. And we're probably going to trim up some chicken later too. But basically what we're going to do, you know, with these pork ribs, there's really not much to do. You don't really got to trim too much off of them. If you got a little bit of extra fat, maybe you want to just take a little chunk of that off. But for the most part, with these country style ribs, they're good to go. All we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and put these in a pan. And what we're going to do is we're going to get these things marinated. With a little bit of dry rub, we're going to let these sit in the fridge for a while. Later on, we'll be taking them outside, putting them on the old Rectech, and we'll go from there. So really all I'm going to do to season these ribs, I always like to use a pre-rub, which is basically salt, pepper, garlic. There's a lot of products out there you can buy. You can simply mix your own salt, pepper, and garlic. For me, I'll tell everybody up front, I like to use the Killer Hogs AP seasoning. I can make this real simple by mixing it up, but this is a good product. Got a really good mix to it, and it's just ready to go right out of the jar. That way you don't have to mess with it. Again, use whatever seasoning you like. Salt, pepper, and garlic as a pre-rub is what I like to go with. And what that's also going to do with the salt content that's in there, it's going to help draw some of that moisture out of the meat, make it a little bit sticky, so when you get that next layer of rub on there, it's going to go ahead and kind of help that stick up, where you don't have to use a binder like mustard or oil. You know, if we're doing competition ribs, we generally tend to use a binder on there. Today, you know, I'm just cooking for the backyard. A couple family members coming over, we're just going to eat. So here's how we're going to run this today. We're basically going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. I like to always give it a chance to tack up, because the salt content that's in this pre-rub will actually pull a lot of that moisture out, like I said, and get it nice and sticky for you. Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're doing a little backyard chicken. Just picked up a nice little 4-pack of pretty large size chicken thighs. We're going to do somewhat of a comp style chicken on this. I'm not going to get too crazy with the trimming today. Again, we're just kind of cooking for the backyard. It's basically going to be our dinner tonight. So as you'll see here, I'm going to definitely trim out the excess fat. We're going to try to see if the skin will come off of here. I'm going to treat it somewhat like a competition chicken, but not get too crazy, not lose too much of the meat. When we're trimming them up for competitions, of course, we get them all exactly uniform size. You lose a bunch of meat. We're feeding ourselves with this, so we don't have to get too picky with that. So basically all we're going to do is we're going to come in here. You get all this little bit of fat here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but little chunks of fat, little cartilages. You just want to get rid of that, especially when you're doing competition, obviously. And we're just going to kind of trim this up. You can kind of see that every thigh is going to always have this little knuckle on here. Again, if I was comp trimming this, I would probably knock that knuckle off, get in here, get that little vein out of there. But other than that, we're just going to kind of clean these up, and I'll show you what we do from there. Trimmed up, we really don't need to do a whole lot. Like I said, I'm not getting too carried away because we are eating these tonight versus, you know, if I was turning these in, I'd be trimming a lot more off of these, making sure they were all exactly the same size, so they're all going to be presentable in the box. But at this point, this is really all we need to do. What we're going to do now is we're going to season these up. And again, I am kind of featuring a product today. I am using Malcolm Reed's from How to Barbecue Right. I'm using their Killer Hogs product. Really good on chicken. When I do beef, when I do pork, I have my own signature rubs that I always use. I've been finding that this works really well on the chicken. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the AP seasoning as a little bit of a base coat. I'm not putting a whole lot on there. We're just getting a little bit of that salt, pepper, garlic in there. And then I'm going to hit it with just a touch of the hot rub on the bottom. It's not super spicy, but it does have some kick to it. And we just want to give that chicken a little bit of a kick. So we're going to put that on the bottom side. Then we're going to come back with the Killer Hogs, the barbecue rub. And again, on the bottom side here, I'm just going real light, getting a little bit of flavor on there. we're going to focus more on the top side, which of course would be your presentation side, so you want to see that. And same kind of thing here. I'm going to just flip these over. As you can see, as I trim these, I pull the skins back. I know a lot of guys, they will pull the skins completely off and they scrape them and do all this other stuff. I've just never really found the need to do that. I pull them back to where they're just kind of hanging on a little bit, and then I can actually get the seasonings under the skin. And there's a reason I like to do this too, because it's about layers of flavor. And so all I'm doing now is I'm just adding that extra layer with that salt, pepper, garlic underneath that skin. Not real heavy, just want enough to get it in there. And then again, I'm going to hit it back with a little bit of that Killer Hogs hot rub. And we're not trying to make these super hot or spicy, we're just getting a little bit of that heat in there. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to come back with our skins. We're going to get these flipped back over. And of course you can kind of tell I'm trying to keep one clean hand here. But basically we're going to take this and we're going to wrap her up like that. We're going to get it into the pan. And remember, when you put these in, especially when you go to put them on the grill and when you go to cook them, you want to make sure you put them in exactly the way you want them to look, because that's how they're going to cook. And we're basically just going to get these put back in here. You do want to make sure that skin gets wrapped around there pretty tight so it gets nice. It doesn't want to start falling off on you. And the way we're going to cook these today, we're going to go ahead and smoke them for about 30-40 minutes, get a nice layer of smoke on them. And then we're not going to wrap them, we're just going to cover the pan. We're going to add a little butter to them, and then we're going to cover the pan. And that's basically what we're looking for right there. And what you can see now is I'm going to take the barbecue rub. I'm going to put a nice, good, even coat on there. I'm not going to get too crazy. As we get farther into the process, as it's cooking, we may add a little rub just for color as we go. Just want to get a nice, even coat on there. And that's about all we need. And basically all we're going to do now is I'm going to take this, I'm going to cover it, and it's going to go chill out in the fridge for a couple hours until it's time to start cooking. Okay, so we're back with the country style ribs now. So it's been about, I think it's been like 10 or 15 minutes. And again, you know, when I put that all-purpose, that salt, pepper, garlic on there, you don't really necessarily have to wait. You could go ahead and just put your pork rub on there. The reason I do, and it's kind of hard to pick up on camera, I'm sure, but by letting that sit for 10 or 15 minutes, it did start to pull, the salt starts to pull a little bit of moisture out. And that's just going to basically help create its own binder to help our rub stick on there. So what we're using here, this is our signature rub. This is something we've been using in competition for about the last year and a half. It's done really well for us, so of course why change it if it's working, right? And what we're going to do now basically is we're just going to get a nice thick coat. You don't want to get real crazy, but you want a nice thick coat of rub on there, because you're always going to lose a little bit, you know, as these things start to render and cook, you're going to lose some rub. So is there such a thing as too much? Yeah, of course there is, but it takes quite a bit to get to that point, you know. You want that flavor in there, and you want that to stand out, you know. You want to know that you're eating pork if you're eating pork as well, so that's one thing you got to watch out, and how much spice you're putting in there. And everyone's got a different way of doing their stuff, and I just like to get a nice layer of flavor in there for you. And so we're just going to go ahead and finish getting the rub on these. And basically all we're going to do at this point, kind of like we're doing with our chicken today, we're just going to go ahead, we're going to get the rub on, we're going to stick this in the fridge, and we're just going to we're basically doing a dry marinade is what we're doing. We're going to give the salts and the sugars that are in this rub a chance to penetrate into the meat. By letting it sit for a couple hours, that's going to do a good job of that, so then you're not just getting the flavor just on the surface, it's actually penetrating down into the meat. You can do this the night before as well and let it sit in the fridge. There's nothing wrong with that. Typically probably about 2 hours, you know. You want to let it sit for at least about 2 hours. And so that's it. We're going to do that. keep in mind, you know, we have these spots. If you miss a little bit, that's fine, because we're going to probably dash this just a little bit more once we put it on the smoker. And there you go. We got that rub on there. It's going to start to dry marinate, and we're just going to let that sit in the fridge for about 2 hours, and then we'll get it out on the RecTech. Alright, so it's been about a couple hours now. These things have been marinating real nice, and as you can see, you got nice, it's starting to liquefy, and that's kind of what you're looking for at this point. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and just top them off with another little dash of rub, not too much, just kind of make sure we get those gaps filled in. Cooking today on our RecTech pellet smoker, and so we're looking for about 275. We're going to start these off. Maybe cooking them for about an hour and a half, then we're going to cover them up to get them nice and tender. So what we're going to do here, another little tip and trick that I like to show. Got one of these little grill toppers, and all I do really is make a little basket out of it. Also, something else I'll do, I use this with the chicken a lot, is we can just put it on one of these little pizza pans or any type of a rack. The advantage to doing that, you can pull everything off at one time. Just makes it real quick and easy when you go into transfer, not leaving your smoker sitting there open for a long time. And then again, it just makes it a lot easier to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to throw these ribs right in this basket. Making sure you're leaving just a little bit of space here, so that way they're not touching, you get smoke all the way through them. And, you know, it's going to be a little bit tight here, but we're fine. But again, this way later when I go to pull these off, I can get them right off the grill real quick and easy. And there you go. And that's basically the simple way to do that. We're going to come back, check on these about a half hour, see how they're looking. Basically, we're going to cook them for about an hour and a half. Get a nice bark on them, and then we'll go ahead. If they look like they're good at that point, we'll probably put a little bit of butter in the pan, maybe just a drop of water, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap them up and get them tender. Okay, so yeah, so basically we're going to do the kind of the same principle here with the chicken. I'm going to go ahead and use a little rack. Again, you can use an oven rack. They make little chicken racks. I actually bought all these at an auction. I got like 30 of them for 10 bucks, so they come in real handy for barbecue. So, but the reason we're going to do that, again, it's just going to make it a lot easier when we go to transfer these off the grill later. And again, when you put these on, make sure they're kind of packed in there nice and tight. You want that to keep that form, because however you put them on there is how they're going to cook. You want to keep them nice and tight looking. The other advantage of using these screens, or you know, whether you use a screen or you use a rack, whatever the case, it's going to allow you to not have to handle the meat individually each time either. You know, you go to pull them off with your tongs or your hot gloves, and you're getting your fingers all over them, you start messing up your rub. So that's just something to consider. You know, you want to, got a couple little spots here that I didn't quite get. So that's something you just want to consider as well. Each time you handle it, you have a chance of, you know, if you're eating it in your backyard, whatever, but if you're at a competition, of course, you want to really be careful with that factor. And so yeah, as you can see, we have it on our rack now. We're just going to put that right on the grill like that. Alright, so it's been about 30 minutes, and all we're really going to do here is just kind of check the ribs, give them a little quick spritz. What I'm using today is apple cider vinegar and water. It's probably about 2 parts water. I really don't want too much vinegar flavor in there, but it just kind of helps break it down a little bit also. A little flavor with the apple cider. So all we're going to do is give these a spritz, see how they're looking. So I don't know if you can see on there, but the ribs are looking pretty good. It's just a matter of getting that bark set up, and all we're going to do from here now is come back about another 30-40 minutes. We're going to spray them again. We're looking for about a total cook time of probably about an hour and a half at this point, and then we're going to cover them and tenderize them. Okay, so on this chicken, it's been about 35, almost 40 minutes. We got about all the smoke we really need to get into those chickens now. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and get that chicken pulled off. You can see that the rub's starting to kind of set on there. And what we're going to do is get these panned up real quick. get these with a little bit of butter. We don't use real butter because it does tend to burn. We go ahead and like to use this liquid parquet. Use this in just about everything we do. That's really about all we're going to do to this chicken. We're going to get that covered up like that. What that's going to do is it's going to help tenderize. It's going to give it a little bit of flavor as well. And then what we'll do, just for one little touch of pop of flavor, sprinkle just a little bit more of that rub on there. All we're going to do, you can use foil. I use these little covers that come with the pans, and we're basically just going to put that back on there now. We're going to let that cook about another probably 70 minutes or so, 75 minutes. We'll check them after about an hour and see how they're looking. So these ribs have been cooking for about an hour now. We're going to go ahead and just spritz them again. We're just using a little bit of that apple cider vinegar and water. Kind of see that they're starting to dry up, and that's what you want to avoid. You just try not to get them too dry. They're starting to get a real nice color on them, kind of getting that nice bark. That's kind of what we're looking for at this point. All we need to do now is give them probably, by the looks of them, about another 20 or 30 minutes, and they should be about ready to wrap. Alright, so we're getting close to that hour and a half mark, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and pull these ribs out of here. That's really nice color on these ribs. You can kind of see that the bark is good and set. A little wet still, but not too bad. Basically what we're looking to do at this point is we want to get a little bit of moisture in the pan. So we're just going to get a little bit of that apple cider vinegar, water mix in there. Of course, our good old parquet. And we're not going too much. We're just going to get some in the pan, something to mix it with because we're going to put it on the top as well. Get a little bit of brown sugar in there. Kind of similar to if we're doing a competition wrap. Of course, we're not wrapping these ribs. We're just going to be putting these in a little covered foil pan. So this is my hot garlic habanero honey that we're going to use on here. This is a regular honey jar, but I mixed it in here just to make it easier. We don't want to put too much in there. We don't want it like super hot. But we're just going to get these ribs put in here. And as you can see, we just kind of got them all panned up here now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back once again. We're going to hit these a little more butter because we want to get that moisture in there because we're working on tenderizing these ribs now. About that much. Don't need to get a crazy amount in there. Just want a good amount. And with a little bit of brown sugar. And then again, for that heat factor, we're going to come back with some of that habanero honey. And what I actually do, this is it's a honey garlic habanero wing sauce that I found. It's working really good. And it's a little on the spicy side, so what I do is I cut that with regular pear honey as well, just to kind of tame it down a little bit. That's going to give us a nice base of flavor for that to marinate in. And we're just going to hit with a little bit more rub. And all we're really going to do now is we're going to get this covered up. I guess we're going to hit that with a little bit more of the apple cider vinegar too. It's just adding a little bit of that moisture factor. And make sure you get that wrapped up nice and tight, so that way you're keeping that, you're basically steaming them to moisturize them. So you want to make sure it's good and tight so the heat's not getting out of there. Now we're just going to slide that right back in. I'm going to check those in about an hour. They should take about an hour to hour and a half to tenderize. Okay, so the chicken's been on for about an hour now, which should be more than likely about done. We're going to go ahead and pull it off. We're going to do a little temperature check. We'll see where they're looking at. Just going to get a little quick internal temperature check here, see where we're looking at. Yeah, we're coming in 197 there. We're looking for give or take about that 200 degrees, so that make sure we're nice and tender. That's coming in at 200. That one's coming in right at 201, 202. So we know that little guy's done. So we know we're set here. All we're going to do now, kind of like anything else, we're going to let these just rest for a while. So we're just going to go ahead, let that kind of start to slowly cool down, cooking its own juices, and we're just going to leave that covered up, let it sit there for a while. Rest it for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to go ahead and get these chickens glazed up, and we'll show you how we do that. Okay, so at this point, the rib is about halfway done being tenderized. And what I'm going to do actually right now is just want to check to make sure we do got enough moisture in there. But I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of sauce. The reason you want to wait a little bit on that part of it, you get the sauce in there too early and it could start to want to burn on you, and you don't want that. And so we basically just gonna dab some sauce on here. That's really about all we're gonna do. Just kind of checking it out. It looks like these things are starting to shrink up a little bit, which is a good sign. You know, it's just like your pullback if you're doing a rack of ribs. And that's about it. We just want to get a little more flavor in there, let that sauce cook into it a little bit. We are going to do a little final glaze on these at the end as well, but we like to do that about halfway through. We don't want to do it again too soon, just to make sure we don't burn that sauce on. And we'll just put them right back on the grill. Alright, it is time to get this chicken glazed up. We went ahead and let that rest for about 20 minutes, just kind of let it hang out. Basically all we're going to do at this point now, try to keep it in frame here, sorry about that. The easiest way I find to do this, and what we're going to do, you want to warm your sauce up a little bit before you put it on, just so you're not putting cold sauce in there and shocking the meat. So you're just going to let that go ahead and drain off a little bit. On that chicken, keep over a pan here so we're not dripping. You don't need to go super heavy. We're just trying to get a nice little glaze coating basically on there. As you can see. And again, I'm using this little rack here because it's just going to make it real easy to get it off and on that grill when I'm done. And all we're going to do now is we still got the RecTech running at about somewhere between 275 and 300 there. We're just going to put these on for about 10-12 minutes or so, just enough to get that sauce to tack up and be nice and sticky glaze on there. Make sure you get the sides there. And that's about it. Now we're just going to put this right back on the grill. Okay, so these ribs have been tenderizing for about an hour and a half or so now, so we're going to go ahead and pull these out. Take a look at these. Now, really depending on how you want to do it, you could rest these for a while. Wouldn't hurt to let them rest. Generally, once you know you're at temp, maybe let them rest for about 15-20 minutes. Absorb a little bit of the moisture back in, but we're going to just check the temps on these real quick, see where we're sitting at. We're looking for a temperature right around 200, 202, somewhere right in there. We hit that point, then we know we're nice and tender on the inside. So right here, I'm hitting it about 203 there on a big one. We're at 202. So these things are ready to go. We're going to go ahead and just let those rest for about 20 minutes, absorb some of that moisture back in there, tighten up a little bit, and then we'll get them glazed up. Okay, so we're about to finish up these country style bone-in ribs. So we've been letting them rest for about 20 minutes. Just kind of let them tighten up a little bit. And same thing, you know, just like we do with our other meats, we're going to put them right on one of these little racks here. It's just going to make it really easy to get them off and on. And kind of see what I'm doing here. And we're not looking to do too much more to these ribs, other than we're just going to get a nice little glaze of sauce on them. Again, we always like to warm that sauce up so that way it's not getting too thick on there. And we're just going to hit them up here. Once we get these things sauced up, all we're going to do is throw them back on for about 10 minutes just to get that sauce to kind of tack up on there. Want that like kind of sticky. And again, as you can see, I'm not really putting too much on there. I'm just getting enough where we're going to have that flavor on there and have a nice glaze. That's it. That's really about all we need on there. Could flip them and do both sides, but I'm just going to do this side here. Let it come right back on the grill. Alright, so that chicken has been sitting back on the heat now for about another 10-12 minutes. As you can see, we got a nice sticky glaze there, and we are basically done with that chicken. I'll meet you inside. Alright, so it's been about just a hair over 10 minutes. Take a look at these ribs. Got that glaze going on there. Good and sticky. I would say those are done. Alright, so we're back inside. Basically just a quick recap of kind of what we did today. We did a little backyard style, kind of a competition chicken. Didn't get too aggressive as we talked about earlier. We just wanted to get the same basic concept. We do like to make them that way. It's always good to practice. And then we did some country style pork ribs to go along with it. That's basically going to be our dinner tonight. That's why we didn't get all too aggressive with the trimming and anything like that. But other than that, quick recap of what we did. You know, we did the little AP seasoning there on the ribs and the chicken. We let them sit for a little while. We did the rub on there, let them dry marinate for about 2 hours before we threw them on the Rectech. Cooked them at about 275, and you know, we cooked them for about an hour and a half. Covered them up, put our glaze in there, and now we're gonna try them out. Just tell by picking it up, these ribs are super tender. Really don't even need a knife, but just to show you kind of how they are. Got a nice little smoke ring in there. And of course, the best part of the day, you get to try it out. And that was a good rib. Thanks for watching.